Well, they almost blew it, but West Virginia held on, and the Mountaineers do win on the road in Arizona 31-26. So a game that was kind of hard to predict, and I admitted that going into the week and even throughout the week. West Virginia controlled almost all the way through that game. They clearly looked like the better team, and even though both teams have made mistakes and been disappointing all season long, it appeared Arizona was the team that was going to make more mistakes and was more disappointing and was just shooting themselves in the foot more often. And they did that time and time again throughout the game, but they almost were able to still come back and ruin West Virginia's party, ruin my game recap. I would have had to write the whole thing. I wouldn't be talking to you right now because I would still be writing that thing and maybe give you flashbacks of the Houston game also on the road, the worst loss of last year, even though last year was a quality year for the Mountaineers. But none of that happened. West Virginia held on and they did get the win. They are now 4-4 overall and now back above 500 in conference play. Mike Osti here. This is our WV Sports Now post-game show here. I did not make the trip across the country. Little upset. Don't get to enjoy the Arizona heat. I do like to golf out there. It's kind of a little too hot to maybe be there too long, but I do enjoy Arizona. I do enjoy the golf. I do enjoy the college town feel of Tucson, Arizona. I do enjoy being in Arizona. I do enjoy the nightlife there as well. I've been, but I did not make this trip. So you get a post game show here as I cover it from home. And now the Mountaineers go into a bye week after a much needed victory. Now, I'd imagine Neil Brown is still going to speak on Monday. I got some questions for him, as I'm sure everybody would imagine. The players will not speak because it is a bye week. And obviously, they had to get the win, or else, all hell would break loose even more so than it has been. But they somewhat now have a chance of respectability this year because the schedule does get a lot easier. Nothing is easy officially in this crazy season of college football or in a major conference in the Big 12, but they might be favored in most of the games, if not all of them. They likely will have the talent edge in most of those games, regardless of who plays. And West Virginia probably should certainly get at minimum bowl eligibility, if not more. Hell, they might even finish with 8 wins in the regular season again. Seems like the Big 12 chance and Big 12 contention this year is still probably not happening. And that was the hope of this season. That was the expectations of this season. That's what the program and players said they expected this year. So it was fair to expect it. They didn't do it. They underachieved. They lost. They didn't show up for big games. None of that is excused right now. And I imagine most of the fans, as what I'm seeing, still are out on Neil Brown, still kind of are, hesitant on this season. If they do finish with 8 wins and then 9 in a bowl game like last year, they're going to say, where was the big win? You didn't show up in big wins, in big games. You didn't have any big wins, and you're just beating up on lesser teams. The wins, Kansas has been not nearly what they're supposed to be. Oklahoma State's enduring the worst year under Mike Gundy in 20 years, and Arizona has been a major disappointment, and they shot themselves in the foot throughout the game. And then, of course, you're looking at an FCS victory. But nonetheless, the situation is the situation. And for the purpose of this, they do have a victory against Arizona, 31-26 on the road, a cross-country trip. And before the year started, before the underachieving, before the disappointing year, I did pencil this in as a loss just because, like Houston, I didn't think they would go that far and be able to get up for a game. Nico also plays really, really well in the game. It's pretty clear, and if I had to guess, guys, not to pop your balloon, Brown's going to start Green if he's healthy. He did allude to maybe having an opportunity for somebody else for Nico at the end of the year. Likely the season would have to go awry, and it kind of has, but now you're coming off a victory. I know he put in Green for JT. I know he's done this before. I would predict the Green starts when healthy, and Brown will cite the last 2 drives that he was in at the end of the first half against Kansas State before the wheels fell off. And of course, the 2 picks before that made my question legitimate to me because he wasn't playing well. He's made tons of mistakes. He's thrown 8 picks this year, which is double what he did last year. And Nico was very, very efficient. 18 for 22, I believe, 198, 2 touchdowns. I believe I have that memorized without having to look it up, but I can pull up stat broadcast here from WVU if I have to, but around that neighborhood. And yeah, Arizona's defense is not great, but he looked the best he's ever looked. Even in the wins last year, he did not look like this. I will now go to the chat. I'm not going to do this too long because fortunately, this is a 7 p.m. kickoff time East Coast. Maybe fortunate for you guys as well. So this doesn't have to happen at 3 in the morning. If it was 10:30 p.m. like I was dreading, I wouldn't even be doing one of these. I'd be trying to sleep. Third and longs are still killing us. Yeah, definitely a problem there. Do you think we'll have a new D coordinator next week? I would be surprised if there's a coaching change off a victory. And again, if they would have lost this game, the defense looked really, really bad. I always thought that Brown would definitely last this entire year, no matter what. I've always said that. I always thought Brown would last this entire year, no matter what. You're obviously talking about Jordan Leslie, but I've also always thought that if they did make a change in the middle of the year, it would maybe be an assistant coach. It would maybe likely be Jordan Leslie because the defense has been the biggest problem of all in terms of coaching and in terms of level of play, and maybe take things away from Brown before they really make the decision and see if they can figure out the money in the offseason. But now they're coming off a victory. Brown does not like to change continuity. He's not going to go in anyone's office and say you got to get rid of Jordan. And I think Wren would ask Brown before doing anything with his assistants. Certainly, since Brown is still the head coach, I would predict no. If I had to bet money right now, I would think the staff is intact, this team is intact. I even think Green's going to start the next game after the bye when he gets healthy. Again, I would probably go to Nico now. I hear the fans want Nico. He did play really, really well, better than I thought he would have played. And I'm still not sold he's the guy for next year, even though I think if Brown's back, I'm sure he would be the guy. If Brown's not there, he likely would not, and the whole roster would be gone. But some fans might be sold now, but if I had to bet on the coaching staff, Brown will be back now for sure because they just got to win. They're not going to pull the rug out from under him when the team plays hard for him on a road trip thousands of miles across the country. Wren's not going to do it. Doesn't mean he can't be fired in the offseason, but it definitely means he's lasting the year. And I would have thought that anyway, really. And I would be surprised if they're going to do that they then would take the defensive coordinator away from Brown in the middle of the season after a win when they're keeping Brown until the end of the year. Doesn't mean Brown can't be fired at the end of the season if this goes even further off the rails. But I would be surprised if Jordan Leslie is let go. Now, even though the defense, again, pass defense wise, and Brown will just, okay, we can't change the personnel. I think the personnel still isn't good enough, especially with how banged up they are and the backups playing. But the pass defense, any other team with a solid quarterback would have lit this up and would have beat West Virginia. But the Mountaineers did play who they played. They did win the game. I'd be surprised. Anyone else with any comments, questions, anything else? Usually this chat does see some activity here. I obviously don't always do post-game shows because I'm usually at the stadium. I likely will be at Cincinnati because that is the game after the bye. So likely not one of these again until maybe the end of the year, the game against Texas Tech. I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to Lubbock. I'm definitely not going to go to Lubbock at the end of the year. So I likely will be at Cincinnati. We'll see. But if not, I'll do another one of these. I mean, that's a drivable trip, and depending on when that game's scheduled. Certainly, if it's an early game, I'm going to go. But anyone have anything else? Obviously, I can do a whole thing on Nico. Any thoughts on? Do you want Nico now in? Do you want Green to stay aboard? Because obviously, a lot of fans were high on Green before. And again, I don't think anything's really going to change now because of this win. So maybe does that upset you? Could be another question. You want to win this game, but I cannot see. I'd be very surprised with firings, with moving of coaching staffs, with things changing, all of that off a win, and especially with I don't see it. If Brown is our coach next year, do we get rid of Jordan? And of course, you're talking about WVU. I think if I had to bet money, if I had to bet money, I would say Brown is back next year, barring this season not at least go to a bowl game. And then I still don't know if that means the whole staff comes back, though. I definitely think Jordan Leslie is probably more on the hook than Brown if I had to bet on what guaranteedly occurs. We did see a coaching change, a coordinator change with Graham Harrell after that 22 season was so bad, and that led to Brown taking over play calling. Say what you want about it, but that was a change, and they obviously decided to keep on with Neil Brown. The difference here, which is obvious and glaring, Graham Harrell and Brown, I'm not going to say they didn't get along, but they weren't the friends that Brown and Jordan Leslie are, that Brown and Chad Scott are. They weren't his boys that he's been with forever. they're not, it wasn't the same as Matt Moore and Brown. Graham Harrell was an outsider coming in that Brown had not really worked with before outside of having the similar Mike Leach, tree connection, but not really working together type of thing. So, and Brown's able to call offensive plays. Not so much on defense. He's going to rely on more of an experienced defensive coach like a Leslie, even if you don't like him. Maybe they'll bring that up to Brown. I would say there's a higher likelihood that Jordan Leslie is not back than Brown. Again, it doesn't mean Brown can't be fired. It doesn't mean I'd even be surprised if he was fired. I think there's even a chance that Brown may want to, mutually part ways potentially. I think he's kind of sick of the situation as well. And I have said before, I don't think when the program gets back to national contention, gets back to national relevancy, and gets back to where it should be and historically has usually been, certainly in the last 30 plus years, I don't think Brown will be the coach for that situation. I think Brown likely is a ceiling of this 8-9 win Deuce Mayo Bowl type of situation. And obviously, I do think the program should expect more and should experience more, and the fans deserve more. But I think there's a higher likelihood that Jordan Leslie is fired. And I think there's a possibility, kind of what you're saying, that, okay, if you have to have Brown back, at least Jordan Leslie is not, and you get a new DC. I think that is possible. I do think that is possible. That's not going to crush anything financially. Like, that is possible. They can do that. But maybe Brown fights and pounds the table for Leslie again. Brown fought and pounded the table a couple years ago for those assistant coaches, and they were basically brought back, obviously with the exception of the Graham Harrell situation. He fought to promote Chad Scott, and it's him calling plays. Chad Scott's really, I don't know how much of a coordinator of offense he is, more of like an offensive assistant, probably be a better name for him in terms of his role, but that's a Brown call. That Brown made that call. Running back coordinator moving up to OC. I'm not saying Chad Scott's not a great guy or can't even do the job, but that was a Brown call, and he's calling the plays, so why not? But I think there's a chance Jordan Leslie is not back next year for sure. There's a chance Brown's not back for sure. People keep bringing up money. I get all that. The money's not great, but they do have a better NIL situation than a lot of people are giving them credit. They were top 30 in the country entering the season in NIL, and that was before McAfee's donation and other alums. Again, I'm not saying it's elite or great or where you want it to be, and the overall department money is more important athletically, not the school. But the NIL is good enough they can get players again. It's good enough they can compete to what they're doing. So we cannot win more than 2 of the last 4. No shot. If we do, maybe he comes back. The schedule's not hard at the end of the year. Again, I'm not saying that winning the end of the year would be impressive when you look at the schedule. They're playing Baylor, they're playing Texas Tech, Cincinnati, UCF. I believe that's the 4. Cincinnati again is on the road, but they boat raced them a year ago. Cincinnati is more competitive this year. Texas Tech is more competitive this year. UCF is even better this year. I get all that, but this is a winnable stretch. Do I think they're going to win them all? No. I think they reasonably can win 3 of these 4, and if they win 3 of these 4, I think Brown comes back. I'll give you that. The 2 out of 4 would make it borderline. That would make it borderline. And Ren doesn't work in win total bars like everyone's putting out there. You got to have 8, you got to have 6, 7, you'll think about it, all that everyone was talking about before the season. Bren does not work in that. It might depend on, if they win 3 out of 4, but they dominate Texas Tech and then dominate the bowl, and maybe they dropped one before. I could see Ren being convinced. He really does go with his gut feeling and how things are working. Obviously, money and everything else will play into it too. I don't think he's going to have this bar in his brain right now that, man, they got to win them out. They got to win them all. Or else even if they 3 out of 4 and it's a close game, I still said win them out. So I can't do it. No, that's not how Ren works. It's not how Ren works. He's made it clear he doesn't work that way. And an AD probably should not. You can't, if you lose one by a controversial call and otherwise you're 3 out of 4, you can't say, well, I got to stick to my guns. I said 4, you got to win them out. No, I think you got to have a cool, calm, collected head, which I think Ren does. But 2 out of 4 would make this, borderline situation. But Dopey, which is your name out there on what I'm looking at here on the YouTube comments, don't know your real name. You got to look at that schedule again. I mean, those teams are similar to what you're seeing with Arizona, seeing with Kansas, with Oklahoma State. Those are those teams. They're middle of the pack teams. Maybe they're better than them, but they're middle of the pack teams like West Virginia right now in the Big 12. There's no way in the world you can convince me that those teams are not beatable. They could beat West Virginia too, but West Virginia could win 3 out of those last 4, and it would not be some unheard of situation. It just would not. When you look at the schedule and who is coming up. Again, if you're just joining us here in this post-game show, and probably I would imagine you're enjoying your night, so I don't mind if you're not, although I do definitely see some people are. West Virginia wins at 31-26. Arizona scratches and claws and makes a lot of people feel like the Mountaineers were going to blow this game, and if they did, with how much they controlled it prior and won in every category in yards and third downs and fourth downs and going forward and converting and all of that. Nico playing well, back in his home state that he does claim, with people trying to argue about Colorado too. If Arizona would have somehow won, it doesn't matter how, like the Houston game a year ago, then this would be a meltdown. Now our numbers would go through the roof, I'm sure, and I'd have thousands of people here instead of just whatever I have now. But I mean, that would be a scenario where I think the Venom would be out of control. I mean, it's already been, but I think that would be just peak. Didn't happen though. The Mountaineers won it 30-26. They held on. They had to get a win. They had to freaking win. Doesn't matter how. They had to get a win. They did it on the road. And I do kind of think that maybe they're better off on the road than at home. Like maybe that's how they beat Cincinnati. They're not going to be at home. It'll be a while before getting back home to deal with the situation at home again. You don't have to worry about the attendance for a while, several weeks now with the bye in the middle. So almost a month, really, when you look at when that game will be played. It's almost a full month. So maybe that's good too. Maybe they're better away from home. They've kind of proved that a little bit. But does anyone have anything else? Obviously, the Mountaineers win it. Nico plays really well. Nico plays really, really well. He played because Green was hurt. That's clear. But Green has made a lot of mistakes this year and has not played smart, even though there's explosive plays at times. Last year, he was smart with the explosive plays, with the exception of the Houston game. This year, you're doubling up the interceptions. Opponents will score an awful lot of them. You're throwing errant throws all over the field. Your completion percentage is no better. Yeah, there's explosive plays. You can make an argument that Nico's the better quarterback to win now. Forget the future, but to win now and save this year. I don't think Brown will do it. I think Brown will start Green. Now, if Green throws 2 picks in the first half against the Bearcats, then I could see going to Nico. But I also think Brown knows in the back of his mind, which the fans are not taking into account right now. I don't think you guys are taking this into account, to be fair. Arizona is not good. Arizona's defense is not good. A lot of teams are putting up points against Arizona, and Arizona usually struggles to score themselves, but yet they scored against the Mountaineers. So West Virginia defensively still a problem, especially pass defense-wise. But this is an Arizona team that has been, if you think West Virginia has been a disappointment for what their expectations were coming into the season, I had an Arizona beat writer on my show. I appeared on his show in Justin Spears with the Tucson Star and ESPN Tucson. And he made it clear that Arizona is just as disappointing. They have 8 of their 11 starters defensively out, so they're more banged up than West Virginia. It's a similar vibe. Granted, they're starting anew after what happened last year with the coaching staff and going to Washington and all of that. And Brown's been there 6 years, so it's a little different. But this is not like you did this to a quality opponent, or this is not a big win, even though it's a strong win and a nice win to have and a needed win on the road. So he might also take that into account. I think Brown's thinking, like, what would Nico's numbers be against Iowa State, Kansas State? Would they be any better? Maybe take the picks away. Maybe he would have been smarter. Team probably still would lose even with Nico. But I would imagine Brown's going to go Green if I had to bet. We'll see. Anyone have anything else before I jump back into the rest of the coverage of this game? Hear what Brown had to say. I'm obviously not there, so right now talking to you during his presser. I would imagine he's not sitting there naming Nico the starter in a couple weeks after the bye. I would be shell-shocked, but if he did, let me know here in the chat before we close it off. I'm imagining he won't even say that Monday, or he might even definitively say Green is still the guy, and I'm sure he's expecting me to be the one to ask it. Maybe he'll even come out there and put it down before I ask. That could be possible too. I don't think he wants to pull this rug. And remember, when he pulled it away from JT as a transfer and gave it to Green, that was off a loss. That was off of 3 picks against Texas Tech. Green did throw 2 picks, but he had the 2 drives at the end. You don't obviously hold the second half against him because he didn't play in it against Kansas State. He then got hurt, and Nico played well in this game, but against a bad team, then a bye. I think he's going to let Green fight out of it and get healthier during the bye. Now, if he's not healthy, all bets are off, and of course, Nico would play. Anyone have anything else before I shut this off? Again, all of our coverage at WV Sports Now. Find us on social. Hit up Mountaineer Report. By the way, you probably are seen, unfortunately, Ethan Bach is no longer with the network. Ethan's been my number two for years, so it's going to be odd and going to be weird, and kind of already is right now, of not directly working with Ethan. He's moving to Cincinnati for an out of media position, but he'll still be around on social and maybe still, giving us things that he knows, and maybe he'll be a source or maybe future freelancer for us. Cody Nesper, formerly of WVSN, actually was with us years ago before I was really running things here, even though I was still within sports now. It was kind of when our group and our sites and our network and management group kind of was structured differently. So I was involved, but not necessarily driving this. He, at the time, was driving this. Moved on, a couple newspapers. Situation happened at the Dominion Post with Bob Nutting, owner of the Pirates, and his Ogden group buying that and then not retaining Cody. So Cody's now with us. He's my number two now here in a whole new era of WV Sports Now. So find my coverage and Cody Nesper's coverage at WV Sports Now. Find us on social. Find myself. Find him on social. And maybe find more reaction on WV Sports Now. More of my takes, more of these videos here. You will get the pressers when I get them on this channel, but I'm sure you've already seen them at this point. And then that'll do it for this post-game show, as the Mountaineers do get to sing Country Roads. They do it in Arizona, 31-26, holding on despite controlling most of the game. They had to hold on to get the victory. Does it save the year to you? Does it make you trust Brown? I imagine not anymore. What kind of win is this for you? These are things I'll think about here for the remainder of the weekend and into next week and during the bye. Do you now want to go with Nico and have him be the guy, regardless of Green being hurt or healthy? And I'm telling you, I think Brown will go with Green if he is healthy. Let all this simmer as we continue the coverage and now head into a bye week with West Virginia 4-4 overall in the year, 3-2 in conference play. Not the season you'd want at all. Not the season fans should expect or be satisfied with at all. But the schedule does get easier, so we will see how it ends.